If you clicked on this video, there's a part of you that's exhausted from carrying the weight of exceptionalism. Not the glory part, but the burden. And that exhaustion, it's not coming from your ego. It's coming from your authentic self, trying to collapse the wave function of a false narrative. Right now, as you're watching this, there's an invisible identity shield surrounding your consciousness that's imprisoning you in the same expectations, the same pressure to be special, the same version of the hero you've been performing for everyone, including yourself. And here's what most people don't grasp about the observer effect and personal mythology. This identity isn't just psychological. It's literally interfering with the probability field of who you could actually become at a fundamental quantum level. Have you ever noticed how the more you try to live up to your special purpose, the more ordinary and trapped you actually feel? Have you ever questioned why certain individuals can step into profound authenticity almost overnight, while others spend entire lifetimes suffocating under the mythology of being uniquely destined? The answer lives in something quantum theorists call wave function collapse, but what wisdom traditions knew as the dissolution of spiritual ego. But here's where it becomes fascinating. There's a precise moment, and I'm referring to an actual measurable psychological threshold, where your consciousness literally decoheres from the chosen one narrative, where the false prophet version of yourself, with all its grandiosity and secret fear, begins to dissolve at the quantum probability level. And during that dissolution, something remarkable occurs. Reality itself stops reinforcing the exhausting performance and begins to support the authentic human that's been suffocating underneath. Most people never undergo this liberation because they're doing precisely the inverse of what quantum observer theory tells us creates genuine transformation. They're attempting to add more evidence of their specialness to the existing myth. They're trying to enhance the messianic identity. They're attempting to accumulate more proof of their unique destiny. But what if I told you that this strategy is like trying to observe two mutually exclusive quantum states simultaneously while expecting both to remain stable? The Desert Fathers had a warning. Pride clothed in humility is still pride. Contemporary psychology has validated this ancient insight. Dr. Kristen Neff's research at the University of Texas demonstrates that when we genuinely release our attachment to being exceptional, our psychological well-being actually increases exponentially. The neural networks that kept us imprisoned in performance anxiety begin to atrophy, and new pathways form that align with genuine self-compassion and interconnected purpose. But here's what the spiritual industrial complex doesn't tell you. This quantum identity collapse doesn't occur incrementally. It doesn't happen through affirmations or vision boards about your destiny. It happens in an instant of radical ordinariness, what quantum physicists call quantum decoherence, where the chosen one version of you literally stops existing as a probability in your consciousness field. Are you one of the courageous souls who's ready to experience this? Because what I'm about to reveal to you in the following minutes will challenge everything you've been told about significance, about purpose, and about the very architecture of meaning itself. You're about to discover why releasing the chosen one myth isn't just a psychological shift. It's a quantum prerequisite for accessing authentic dimensions of contribution. The question is, are you ready to stop trying to fulfill a predetermined destiny and start allowing your actual gifts to emerge from the field of what you genuinely are? To understand why letting go of the chosen one narrative is the only pathway to quantum authenticity, we need to explore the deepest paradoxes of identity construction itself. Every morning when you awaken, you're not just regaining consciousness. You're collapsing infinite versions of who you could be into a single performed identity. You're selecting, at a subconscious level, which mythology of yourself will dominate this dimensional experience today. But here's what's occurring that most people never perceive. Every time you choose to be the special one you decided you were yesterday, every time you react from the same patterns of exceptionalism, Every time you make choices from the same beliefs about your unique calling, you're not just maintaining continuity, you're actively creating what quantum observers call a probability collapse that locks you deeper into that particular timeline prison. Consider it this way. In the quantum field, all identity possibilities exist simultaneously. The version of you that's genuinely helpful, connected, and living with humble purpose exists right now, in what scientists call superposition. But so does the version of you that's isolated, performing, and repeating the same messianic patterns. The act of observation, your consciousness choosing which reality to inhabit, is what makes one possibility manifest and causes the others to remain as unrealized potential. This is where ancient warnings and modern quantum mechanics converge in the most instructive way. The Christian mystics spoke of kenosis, the self-emptying of Christ's divine status. Buddhist teachings discuss the bodhisattva who refuses final enlightenment to help others, the ultimate rejection of spiritual specialness. What these traditions understood millennia ago, quantum observation theory, is now demonstrating in consciousness laboratories worldwide. Your identity, the chosen person you think you are, is not a cosmic assignment. It's a collection of reinforced thoughts, emotional investments, and behavioral confirmations that have created what psychologists call confirmation bias superhighways. These are the grooves in your psyche that make certain narratives automatic, unconscious, self-perpetuating. They're so embedded that they feel like destiny. But here's the revelation that transforms everything. These narrative superhighways, these patterns that feel so cosmically ordained and unchangeable, they only persist because you keep selecting them. They only possess power because you keep energizing them with your attention, your emotion, your identity investment. The moment, and I mean the precise instant, that you stop identifying with these patterns, something miraculous happens at the quantum level. The wave function that was maintaining that version of reality in a collapsed state begins to decohere. The chosen one identity literally starts to dissolve, not as annihilation, but as liberation. This is why every authentic spiritual journey talks about ego death and rebirth. This is why the hero's journey always includes a moment of complete failure, a descent into anonymity. It's not symbolic, it's quantum mechanical. The false prophet must dissolve for the genuine human to emerge from the field of infinite authentic potential. But here's where most people catastrophize. They think letting go means becoming nobody. They think it means surrendering significance. They approach it with terror, with resistance, with a sense of existential annihilation. But what if I told you that what you think is your special destiny is actually the smallest, most constrained version of what you could contribute? What you're releasing isn't your purpose. It's the prison narrative that's been preventing your actual gifts from manifesting. What you're surrendering isn't your significance. It's the illusion that's been blocking your genuine connection to others. And this is just the foundation. What I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how this quantum process unfolds, why it feels like death, and most importantly, how to navigate it with courage and trust. Because once you comprehend the deeper mechanics of identity dissolution, you'll see that letting go of being chosen isn't something you force, it's something you allow. Take a moment right now. Just breathe. Feel the energy that's moving through your nervous system as you absorb these concepts. There's something releasing, isn't there? Something that wasn't loosened when you first opened this video. That's not your imagination. That's your quantum field beginning to decohere from a false narrative. What you're experiencing right now is what observers call quantum entanglement with authentic possibilities. The information you've just received isn't merely entering your conscious awareness. It's deactivating dormant performance patterns in your psychological structure, awakening cellular memories of who you actually are beyond the mythology you've accepted as cosmic assignment. Feel that subtle relaxation in your shoulders, that gentle releasing of something that's been held rigid for so long. That's the beginning of decoherence. The old chosen one patterns starting to lose their grip on your identity field. Your nervous system is literally beginning to attune to a more honest frequency version of yourself that exists beyond the boundaries of who you've been told you must be. This is sacred ground you're occupying right now. This moment of recognition, this stirring of ordinariness, this gentle opening to something more human. Ancient traditions would call this the threshold of humility. Modern psychology calls it narrative flexibility activation. But what it really is your actual self remembering its genuine nature. Don't try to understand it with your specialized mind. Let your being absorb it. Let your cells receive it. Let your quantum field integrate it. Because what's happening right now is preparing you for what comes next. The deeper revelations that will show you exactly how to work with this energy of despecialization instead of fighting it. Dr. Andrew Newberg, neuroscientist and consciousness researcher, has spent decades studying what he calls the neurobiology of transcendence. His research at Thomas Jefferson University revealed something extraordinary. When we truly release our identification with being specially chosen, our brain waves synchronize with what he terms the common humanity network, a neural configuration associated with connection, empathy, and genuine belonging that exists beyond the isolation of exceptionalism. But this isn't just modern neuroscience discovering new territory. The Philokalia, written by Eastern Orthodox monks over centuries, describes in precise detail the stages of consciousness that occur during what they call kenosis, the self-emptying that Christ modeled. What's remarkable is that their descriptions of ego dissolution and messianic fantasy collapse match exactly what neuroscientists are observing in brain scans during deep states of self-compassion meditation. Dr. Gabor Mate, the trauma specialist who has worked with thousands of people carrying false narratives of exceptionalism, describes in his work how the special child complex forms as a survival mechanism. His clinical observations show that releasing this identity leads to what he calls authentic contact, a state of being where individual specialness dissolves into genuine relational presence. The ancient Taoist text, the Tao Te Ching, wrote, "When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you." What Lao Tzu understood, and what quantum observation theory is now proving, is that our performed identity isn't who we are. It's who we've been conditioned to believe we must become to matter. In the Jewish mystical tradition, there's a concept called bitul, the nullification of the ego self. But bitul doesn't come through acquiring more spiritual experiences or confirming your chosen status. It comes through releasing the illusion of separateness from the human family, the false belief that we are uniquely positioned saviors. Modern researchers like Brené Brown and her work on vulnerability are discovering that at the level of genuine connection, exceptionalism is actually an obstacle. Everything is relationship. Everything is one unified field of human experience expressing itself in infinite ordinary forms. The psychologist Carl Jung taught that individuation, becoming whole, requires what he called the integration of the shadow, including the shadow of our inflation, our secret belief that we are the special one who will save or transform everything. Recent studies in social psychology show that during deep humility experiences, activity in the brain's self-enhancement network, the area responsible for grandiose thinking, dramatically decreases, while areas associated with common humanity and collective consciousness become hyperactive. But here's what these traditions and scientists have observed that changes everything about how we approach transformation. The letting go process of the chosen one myth isn't random. It follows specific laws, specific patterns, specific stages that can be understood and navigated with wisdom. 4 years ago, I was standing in front of a mirror at 3 a.m., looking at someone I barely recognized anymore. I had just been confronted by people I loved about the subtle ways I'd been making everything about my special mission. Papani, my relationships, my career, my entire sense of identity. Everything had been organized around this secret belief that I was uniquely positioned to change the world in ways others couldn't. For years, I had been feeling this strange cognitive dissonance, this inner knowing that the life I was performing wasn't aligned with who I actually was. But every time I considered releasing the narrative, my mind would flood me with terror. If you're not special, what are you? If you don't have a unique destiny, why do you matter? You're abandoning your purpose. That night in front of the mirror, I realized something profound. Those weren't protecting my purpose. They were the fears of the false prophet version of myself. The version that needed to be exceptional to feel worthy. The version that believed significance came from being chosen. The version that thought my identity was my special calling, my unique gifts, my destined impact. And in that moment of complete collapse, something extraordinary happened. I stopped trying to figure out my mission. I stopped trying to manage my legacy. I stopped trying to be chosen. I just let go completely. I surrendered to being ordinary with every cell in my being. What happened next defied everything I thought I knew about how purpose works. Within weeks, opportunities began appearing that were actually aligned with my genuine skills, not my fantasized destiny. People entered my life who related to me as a human, not as a guru or savior. Resources materialized in ways that felt collaborative rather than confirmational. But the most profound change wasn't external, it was internal. I began to experience life from a completely different frequency. Where I used to feel pressured to perform significance, I felt free to contribute naturally. Where I used to feel isolated by my special calling, I felt deeply connected to the ordinary struggles of being human. Where I used to feel burdened by destiny, I felt liberated into presence. That's when I understood what the mystics meant when they talked about kenosis, self-emptying. That's when I realized why every authentic spiritual tradition warns against spiritual pride and messianic identification. That's when I discovered what quantum observers mean when they say the act of observation collapses the wave function. The old me, the chosen one, didn't evolve into the new me. The old me dissolved, and the new me emerged from an entirely different level of consciousness, the level of being human among humans. This isn't just my story. It's the story of every soul that has ever experienced liberation from the chosen one mythology. And if you're watching this, it's calling to become your story too. Because what I discovered in front of that mirror, what the quantum field revealed to me in that moment of complete ordinariness, is what I've dedicated my life to sharing. The path isn't about fulfilling a special destiny. It's about remembering you're beautifully ordinary beneath the layers of exceptionalism and performance. And that remembering, it always begins with letting go of being chosen. If something in my story awakened a recognition in your soul, if you felt that stirring of liberation in your own quantum field, then you're ready to go deeper into these mysteries. Subscribe to this channel right now, because here we explore the deepest quantum reflections of identity itself. We dive into the hidden mechanics of mythology that most people never discover. This is where performers become humans, where destinies become choices, where the quantum field reveals your actual nature. Now, how do you know when this quantum shift away from chosen one mythology is beginning to happen in your own life? The universe has a way of communicating with us through signs, through reality checks, through subtle cracks in the narrative itself. But most people miss these signals because they're looking for dramatic confirmations of their specialness. The first sign is what I call the sacred exhaustion. You start feeling depleted by maintaining the performance that used to energize you. Your mission might be impressive, but it doesn't feel authentic anymore. Your relationships might revolve around your specialness, but they don't create genuine intimacy. Your daily routines feel performative, even though nothing has technically changed. This isn't burnout, It's your soul outgrowing its messianic container. You might notice that you're starting to question narratives you never questioned before. Why do I need to be special? Why do I isolate myself with this calling? Why do I measure my worth by my unique impact? These aren't cynical thoughts. They're your consciousness preparing for liberation. Another powerful sign is what I call mythology glitches. You might start noticing how often you subtly position yourself as the enlightened one in conversations. You might catch yourself thinking, "Others don't understand what I understand," right before someone teaches you something profound. You might have moments where the performance feels so exhausting that you can't maintain it. These aren't failures. They're evidence that your consciousness is beginning to operate from a more honest frequency. Pay attention to how your body responds to being treated as ordinary versus special. The old you might have craved the confirmation, sought the elevated position, rationalized the isolation. But as you attune to authentic frequencies, your body becomes an exquisite detector system. Genuine connection feels light, energizing, spacious. Performance pressure feels heavy, draining, constrictive. You might also notice that old patterns of exceptionalism are amplifying before they dissolve. This is what psychologists call extinction burst. Your habitual ways of seeking confirmation and positioning yourself as chosen might become more intense, more obvious, more uncomfortable. This isn't a sign that you're regressing. It's a sign that these patterns are losing their unconscious hold on you and becoming visible so they can be released. Another profound sign is the appearance of what I call ordinary mentors, people who aren't trying to be gurus or saviors, who live with quiet integrity and genuine contribution. Books fall into your hands that celebrate ordinariness at exactly the right moment. Conversations happen that feel refreshingly honest rather than performatively deep. Opportunities present themselves that value your actual skills rather than your mystique. The universe literally begins to reorganize itself around your emerging humanity. But here's the sign that confirms you're in the deepest part of the quantum shift. You start experiencing what I call the death of destiny. Everything that used to give your life meaning through specialness feels empty. Everything you used to rely on for significance through exceptionalism feels unstable. Everything you used to turn to for identity as the chosen one feels foreign. This isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. It's your consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of the false prophet. It's the Messiah complex dissolving in the cocoon before emerging as an authentic human. It's the most sacred, most necessary part of the liberation process. But here's what I haven't told you yet. Here's the piece of information that changes everything about how you navigate this quantum shift away from chosen one mythology. There's a specific moment in the letting go process where most people grasp back at their specialness. There's a threshold that once crossed makes the transformation into ordinariness irreversible. And there's a choice you'll be faced with that will determine whether you complete the shift or remain trapped between messianic performance and authentic humanity. Ancient spiritual directors called this acedia, the noonday demon, the stage where everything must be released before genuine humility can emerge. Modern psychology has identified this as the identity crisis threshold, the space between the death of grandiose self-concept and the birth of authentic self-acceptance. Quantum theorists recognize it as the decoherence moment, the instant where one narrative collapses and another stabilizes. But what they don't tell you is that this moment doesn't just occur once. It happens multiple times during the liberation process, each time at a deeper level, each time requiring greater honesty, greater vulnerability, greater willingness to be genuinely ordinary. And there's something else, something that will determine not just whether you successfully navigate this quantum shift, but how quickly you do it, how gracefully you move through it, and how completely you embody the ordinary human version of yourself that's waiting to emerge. It has to do with a principle that's hidden in the deepest teachings of every wisdom tradition, encoded in the most advanced theories of quantum observation, and reflected in the liberation stories of every person who has successfully made this journey from the false prophet to the authentic contributor. What is this principle? What is this secret that makes all the difference between those who successfully release the mythology and those who get stuck in the liminal space of half-performance? What is this key that unlocks the door to your actual timeline? I'm going to reveal it to you in just a moment. But first, you need to understand exactly what happens in your brain, your relationships, and your energy field when you truly let go of being the chosen one. Because once you see the mechanism, once you understand the process, you'll never be afraid of ordinariness again. When you truly release the chosen one identity, when you stop trying to maintain and protect and prove the exceptional version of who you think you must be, your entire psychological system undergoes what researchers call authentic integration. Every dimension of your experience begins to function at a higher level of honesty and connection. First, your relational anxiety system completely recalibrates. The constant state of performance pressure that comes from trying to maintain specialness, protect the messianic ego, and sustain a false sense of unique calling begins to dissolve. Your need for confirmation normalizes. Your capacity for genuine reciprocity increases. Your ability to receive from others strengthens. But more than that, you begin to experience a profound sense of belonging that doesn't depend on being exceptional. Remember my story about that night in front of the mirror? The months that followed were the most connected of my life, not because I was finally fulfilling my destiny, but because I had stopped exhausting myself trying to be chosen. I had stopped depleting my energy maintaining an identity that separated me from genuine human fellowship. Your creative function also transforms dramatically. When you're no longer using vast amounts of mental energy to maintain exceptionalism, defend the special self, and suppress ordinary impulses, your mind becomes incredibly collaborative, practical, and genuinely innovative. Problems that seem to require your unique genius suddenly invite collective wisdom. Creative ideas flow naturally from actual observation rather than confirmation bias. Decision-making becomes simpler because you're aligned with what actually serves rather than what confirms your narrative. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset shows that when we change our beliefs from "I am specially gifted" to "I can develop through effort and collaboration," we literally change how we approach challenges. The neural patterns associated with performance anxiety and isolation become less active. The patterns associated with learning, connection, and genuine contribution become more active. You're not just changing your self-concept, you're changing your relational biology. But the most profound benefit is what traditions call true service. The direct experience of contributing from your actual gifts rather than from a narrative of specialness, beyond all mythology, beyond all performance, beyond all stories about being uniquely positioned. This isn't a concept you understand intellectually. It's a living reality you experience in every interaction. You begin to live from what the contemplatives call beginner's mind, a state of constant humility, curiosity, and openness to learning from anyone. You stop approaching life from the perspective of, "I have special knowledge others lack," and start responding to each moment from presence, from authenticity, from genuine not knowing. Your relationships transform because you're no longer trying to be the enlightened one who fixes or elevates others. You're not looking for confirmation, elevated status, or identity from being the teacher. You relate from equality rather than hierarchy. You receive from others rather than only dispensing wisdom. Just like in my own journey, opportunities begin to appear that are perfectly aligned with your actual capacities and genuine interests, rather than your performed destiny. Collaboration flows more easily because you're no longer blocking partnership with beliefs about your unique calling. Mental health improves because you're no longer creating anxiety through impossible standards of exceptionalism. Creativity explodes because you're no longer censoring ideas that seem too ordinary or collaborative. But perhaps most importantly, you develop what I call quantum humility, an unshakable recognition of your interconnected nature with all beings. You know at the deepest level that everyone is struggling and contributing in their own way. You know that the universe doesn't operate through chosen ones, but through the collaborative emergence of countless ordinary actions. You know that letting go of specialness isn't about losing significance, it's about gaining genuine connection to everything. Pause for a moment. Really pause. What if everything you've been taught about purpose, about calling, about becoming your destined self has been a trap? What if the path to your highest contribution isn't about discovering your unique mission, fulfilling your special destiny, becoming the chosen instrument, but about releasing, surrendering, letting go of everything that positions you as exceptional? What if the isolation you've experienced, the performance pressure you've felt, the seeming impossibility of genuine connection, what if all of that has been happening because you've been trying to contribute while still holding on to the very mythology that needed to be released? Think about your own life for a moment. How much energy are you currently spending trying to confirm, maintain, and prove your specialness while secretly feeling more isolated? How much effort are you putting into fulfilling a predetermined destiny while keeping your actual gifts unexpressed because they seem too ordinary? What would happen if you stopped? What would happen if you just let go? Not of your desire to contribute, not of your care for the world, not of your authentic capacities and genuine interests, but of the need to be the chosen one who does it uniquely. What if the person you're trying so hard to become, the destined savior, the uniquely positioned change agent, is actually a smaller, more isolated version of who you already are at your core? What if beneath all the mythology, all the performance, all the stories about special calling and unique destiny, there's a version of you that's already whole, already contributing, already connected to collaborative intelligence and collective love? This isn't just philosophical speculation. This is the direct experience that every liberated person has reported. This is the reality that quantum observation theory is pointing toward. This is the transformation that becomes possible the moment you stop trying to fulfill a special destiny and start allowing your actual humanity to emerge. The caterpillar doesn't become a destined butterfly separate from all other butterflies. It doesn't go to caterpillar destiny coaching or read chosen caterpillar manifestation books or set unique calling goals. It surrenders so completely to the transformation process that its entire mythology dissolves and something entirely authentic emerges. Something that was always its nature but could never manifest while it insisted on being specially chosen. What if your exhaustion, your isolation, your deep longing for genuine connection aren't signs that you haven't found your special purpose yet? What if they're signs that something is so right with you that your soul is no longer willing to settle for the prison of exceptionalism? What if this moment right now is the beginning of your own quantum collapse of the chosen one myth? What if reading these words, feeling these possibilities, sensing this liberation, is your consciousness preparing for the most relieving transformation of your life? The only question is, are you ready to trust ordinariness? Are you ready to let go of who you think you're destined to be and discover who you've always been, beautifully, connectedly, authentically ordinary? But there's something I need to tell you before we continue. What I've shared with you so far is just the foundation. It's the preparation for something much deeper, much more profound, much more liberating than most people ever imagined possible. There are levels to this quantum shift that go beyond releasing personal mythology. There are dimensions of contribution that open up when you complete this process of letting go of specialness that connect you to capacities, relationships, and experiences that the chosen one version of you could never access. I'm talking about what the mystics called koinonia, the genuine communion that emerges when consciousness is no longer separated by identification with exceptionalism. I'm talking about what modern sociologists are discovering about the nature of collective intelligence and its role in creating change at scales individual chosen ones never achieve. In the videos that follow, I'm going to take you into territory that the performance self is terrified to explore. I'm going to show you what happens when the quantum shift is complete, when you've fully embodied your ordinary self, when you're operating from what the contemplatives call common grace. You're going to discover how consciousness doesn't just observe reality from isolation, it literally co-creates it through connection. You're going to learn about the quantum collaboration techniques that allow you to contribute from a completely different level of being. You're going to understand why synchronicities multiply exponentially when you stop trying to be special, why relational abilities amplify dramatically, why your very presence begins to invite authenticity in everyone around you. But here's what you need to understand. These aren't special powers that chosen ones have, and regular people don't. These are natural capacities that become available when you're no longer using all your energy to maintain a false mythology. They're the birthright of ordinary consciousness itself, accessible to anyone who has completed the journey from the messianic self to the authentic human self. The question is, how far are you willing to go? How deep are you willing to dive? How completely are you willing to let go of everything you think makes you special and discover what makes you genuinely connected? Because what comes next will challenge every assumption you've ever had about the nature of purpose, the power of collaboration, and your role as one ordinary contributor in this quantum universe of interconnected emergence. As we reach the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with something that the quantum field has been whispering to you throughout this entire video. Something that your soul already knows, but your messianic mind hasn't quite grasped yet. The version of you that started watching this video is not the same as the version of you that's receiving these words right now. Something has shifted. Something has been released. Something has been deactivated at a cellular, energetic, quantum level. You might not feel dramatically different. The change might be so subtle that your conscious mind barely registers it. But your quantum field knows. Your authentic self knows. The universe knows. And here's the mystery I want to leave you with. The fact that you found this video, that you stayed until this moment, that these words are resonating in your being right now, none of that is because you're chosen. Your quantum field has been orchestrating this moment for longer than you realize, not to confirm your specialness, but to liberate you from it. There are forces, intelligences, aspects of collective consciousness that exist beyond the boundaries of individual exceptionalism that have been guiding you toward this recognition, toward this remembering, toward this moment of choosing between the chosen one mythology and your actual humanity. The question that will echo in your consciousness long after this video ends is this: what if the quantum shift isn't something that's going to make you special? What if it's something that's already freeing you through ordinariness? What if every moment of exhaustion from performance, every stirring of longing for genuine connection, every recognition of your beautiful ordinariness has been preparing you for a transformation that's already begun? What if letting go of being chosen isn't something you do, but something you are? What if the chosen one was never real in the first place? What if who you think you must become is just a temporary mythology, and who you really are is the ordinary human awakening to connection? The answers to these questions aren't found in more seeking your unique purpose, more analyzing your special calling, more figuring out your destined role. They're found in the space of pure presence that opens up when you stop trying to be exceptional and start being willing to be ordinary. They're found in the silence between performances, in the peace beyond significance, in the love that exists prior to all specialness. This is where the real journey begins. If you've stayed with me until this moment, if you've allowed these words to penetrate not just your mythology, but your being, then you know that something irreversible has been set in motion. The quantum shift we've been exploring isn't just a concept anymore. It's a living reality that's beginning to unfold in your life. The chosen one version of you that woke up this morning was operating from one level of consciousness. The you that's receiving these words right now has access to dimensions of ordinariness that didn't exist in your awareness before. This isn't metaphorical, it's quantum mechanical. But here's what's crucial to understand. This is just the beginning. The deactivation that's happened during our time together is like removing a burden. What determines whether that release grows into the full flowering of your authentic ordinary self is what you do in the moments, hours, and days that follow. The quantum field is calling you deeper into connection. Your actual timeline is beckoning you forward into collaboration. The version of yourself that exists beyond all mythology is ready to emerge fully into this reality. This is why I've created a series of videos that will guide you through each stage of this liberation. Each video builds upon the last, taking you deeper into the honesty, higher into the authenticity, further into the truth of who you really are beneath the performance. The next video in this series will reveal the specific practices that allow you to navigate the quantum collapse of exceptionalism with grace instead of terror. You'll discover the contemplative traditions that modern psychology has proven can literally rewire your relational neurology in real time. You'll learn the exact steps that transform letting go of being chosen from a terrifying loss of identity into a joyful emergence into genuine humanity. Right now on your screen, you're seeing videos that represent different aspects of your quantum liberation. Each one contains keys that unlock different dimensions of your ordinariness. Each one reveals different pieces of the puzzle of becoming fully, authentically, beautifully human. Choose the one that calls to you most strongly. Trust that calling. It's not random. It's your quantum field guiding you toward the next perfect step in your liberation. And as you click on that video, as you continue this journey of discovering your ordinary nature, remember this. You're not just watching videos about releasing mythology. You're actively participating in the evolution of consciousness itself toward interconnection. You're part of a quantum field of beings who are awakening to their beautiful ordinariness, and in doing so, helping to dissolve the isolation that keeps the entire collective imprisoned in performance. Welcome to the quantum advice. Welcome to the reflection of your actual self. Welcome to the beginning of the most liberating journey of your life. The next level of your authentic humanity is just one click away.